Welcome to the Daily Beef, presented by Rosters.com. As you can see right below our faces, use promo code CURVE for an instant $20 bonus on your initial deposit. This is the Daily Beef for week 2. We're talking about running backs today. Myself and this other guy here, beautiful hat on, beautiful shirt. Love the way he shows up in that red, white, and blue. Adam Pfeiffer, we're going to talk about running backs. So, honestly, let's just get right into it. It's week 2. We're going to be talking about our top 3, as you can see. Then we're going to be discussing a little bit of Danny Woodhead, and then running back sleepers. So, Adam, number 1 running back, and then we'll talk about some other 2. Who are they?
Yeah, a lot of good receivers this week, so running back is kind of important so you can get some of these guys. But C.J. Anderson, for me, is the top guy. Just 6,800 on DraftKings after his awesome Week 1 performance. Has just an incredible matchup. I mean, the Colts are terrible on defense. They just let last year's 31st ranked rushing offense to go for 116 yards, 4.8 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. And Anderson, the thing with him is it's always been either health or workload. And, he is one of the top 10 talented running backs in the league, I think, when he's healthy, in my opinion. And now that he's healthy, he saw a huge workload, 24 touches in week 1, played 83% of the snaps. And as long as he sees that usage again, he should go for 100 and a touchdown again against his Colts defense. They're very bad. And the thing about Anderson is, according to ESPN, last year, or over his career, actually, he's averaging 4.4 yards per carry in 2 back sets. Now, if you paid attention last year, Peyton Manning didn't run 2 back sets a lot. He was usually in the gun. They're going to run 2 back sets a lot more often with Trevor Siemian at quarterback. So I think this fits Anderson's game a lot better. And I just love him this week. I think he's a lock for 80 and a touchdown. I think he gets 100 yards, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's definitely a back that we're not going to beef about this week. I know I mentioned him on RotoCurve Live, and we talked about him both in both of our articles this week. He's one of those guys, like you said, that gets a ton of work. He has that great matchup, and I didn't know that stat about 4.5 yards per carry out of 2 back sets. That's definitely big. That's something to look at. Now, for me, my number 1 back this week is D'Angelo Williams. This guy is just, when he starts, when Le'Veon Bell's out, he's absolute money. And he's never the highest priced running back either. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why, because he's basically been producing like that. In week 1 last week, he played 56 of 68 snaps. He had an incredible touch percentage of 57.1, which is really just ridiculous. Basically, that means he touched, for every 100 snaps that he played, he touches the ball 57 times. And that's exactly what we saw last week. He had 26 carries, 6 catches. He was targeted the second most times by the Pittsburgh Steelers, after Antonio Brown, of course. 9 times D'Angelo Williams got those targets. That's another big thing to use in PPR formats. And last week, the Cincinnati Bengals, who their matchup is this week, allowed 137 yards on the ground last week to the Jets. Matt Forte had most of those yards, but they also gave up 10 yards per carry to Bilal Powell as well. So a guy like D'Angelo Williams, he's been money as a starter. Adam mentioned last week on the running back beat that he averaged over 24 fantasy points per game as a starter basically in the last 2 years. So that's an interesting stat to use again this week. He has that matchup. So for me, I just don't think we can fade this guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. No beef here. He's literally a top 3 fantasy back when Le'Veon's out, and he's never priced as such. Last 10 games without Le'Veon,
Exactly.
averaging just under 20 carries per game, 94 yards, and he scored 13 touchdowns. So he's a lock for me. He's probably more expensive, honestly.
Yeah, he always seems to go underpriced. Now, for you, other guy, he started off his career pretty expensive. Who's your other running back this week?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the well, Ezekiel Elliott. He didn't have the most impressive debut, 20 carries, uh, bad yards per carry total though. But that was against the Giants. The Giants are gonna be a pretty good run defense this year with Snacks Harrison and Olivier Vernon. They're gonna be a good run defense. So this matchup's a lot better against Washington. They just got torched by the aforementioned D'Angelo Williams. Last year they gave up the 7th most rushing yards per game at just under 124 per. And this is like what you want to look for in DFS because the strength of this Washington secondary, regardless of what we saw last week, is their secondary with 2 very good corners in Brashad Breeland and Josh Norman. Strength of the Dallas offense right now is the running attack, and they run the ball as much as anybody. So this sounds to me like a perfect spot for Ezekiel Elliott to go for at least 20 carries again. He saw 66% of the carries, maybe Alfred Morris gets 7 or 8 carries against his former team, but because Dallas runs the ball so much, if Morris has 8 or 9 carries, it doesn't mean Zeke's gonna not have carries. He's still gonna have 20, I think, in this game. So I really like Ezekiel Elliott. Might have his first 100-yard game here of his career against Washington. They're just so bad against the run.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you that he might have a good game, but the beef that I have with you for Ezekiel Elliott is the fact that on DraftKings he's priced at 7,300, which is $200 more than D'Angelo Williams we just talked about, and $100 more than the guy that I like this week in Lamar Miller. There's a theme here. We talked about guys that get a ton of touches, and that's definitely the way you should approach running backs in NFL DFS, especially those of you that are playing DFS for the first time. Maybe you're playing NFL for the first time. Look for volume. And if for Lamar Miller, it doesn't get much more volume than that. 32 touches last week and 60 snaps. That's absurd. He's making up for lost time, basically, because the Dolphins did not give him nearly enough snaps when he was in Miami. Miller faces the Chiefs this week, who a lot of people will think, you know what? It's a good defense. I'm not sure I can target Lamar Miller against him. Well, I don't know if they're that good of a defense when you look at it. Week one, Melvin Gordon had 57 yards and a touchdown. Danny Woodhead had 120 total yards and a touchdown. That's a combined 177 yards and 2 touchdowns by the Kansas City Chiefs, allowing the running backs. For me, I want to take a guy against that, especially a guy like Miller who's not splitting snaps or carries with anyone. His backups, Alfred Blue and Tyler Irvin, it's all combined 2 carries last week. So a guy like that, Lamar Miller at $100 cheaper than Ezekiel Elliott, I think I'd rather go in that direction.
Yeah, Lamar Miller is. I think Lamar Miller is matchup proof, especially in this offense. It's just so efficient on the carries that he gets, and now that he's getting 25 to 30 type usage, I'm probably gonna never really be afraid to play Lamar Miller if he keeps seeing this usage because he was a top 10 fantasy back each of the last 2 seasons on 12 to 13 touches or carries per game. So no problems with Lamar Miller. My last guy running back is Jonathan Stewart. I think he's in a great spot here. The Niners' run defense heading into the season was projected to be pretty bad. They were good on Monday night, but that was at home against an offense with zero options outside of Todd Gurley, so they kind of just zoned in on him. Not going to be the case here against Carolina with Cam Newton, Kelvin Benjamin, Greg Olsen, and company. Panthers 13-point favorite at home. You want home favorites for your running backs. And, this is a very bad run defense on the road last year. 155.8 rushing yards per game on the road. That number was down 60 yards when they went to home. And according to Jamie Eisenberg of CBS Sports, one of my favorite writers in the industry, opposing home backs against the Niners have either scored a touchdown or have had 100 yards in 14 of the last 16 games. So Stewart, who's a lock for 20 carries pretty much every week, but especially this week, wasn't even that bad against Denver, just didn't get a lot of work, or as much work as usual. I love him a lot, even on DraftKings. And I know he doesn't catch the ball a lot, but he's very, very cheap, very affordable on DraftKings. Right now his price is 5,400. That's lower than guys who won't even see close to the usage he will. So really, really interested in Jonathan Stewart.
It's an interesting point there, and I just have a question real quick. You mentioned you want to target running backs that are at home when they're favored. Why is that?
Yeah, because when you have the team, for instance, San Francisco coming into Carolina as 13-point underdogs, you obviously want Jonathan Stewart in a situation where he can just grind out the clock and get carries late in the game. And that a 13-point favorite is a huge number because that's almost 2 touchdowns of projecting Carolina to be ahead or win by. So if that's the case, especially a run first team already in Carolina, Stewart is going to just run the ball late in games, have the ability to score, and not to mention it also helps that you have a bad offense that's going to be playing from behind. They could be throwing in desperate situations, turn the ball over, give Stewart short yardage and short fields, and give him even more carries. So
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's a good thing to think about, especially for those of you that are playing NFL. Maybe it's your first year in DFS. These little things like that, like Adam just mentioned, a running back at home when he's a big favorite, that usually indicates, with the exception that Vegas does have a few mishaps, not often though. They know some things. They run some algorithms. They know some the ways that things used to go, especially with historical data. So things like that correlate directly with DFS fantasy purposes, and that's exactly why Stewart's a good play. My third running back this week, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me here. I'm a little nervous to say his name. Jeremy Langford. This game's on Monday night. Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles, leading some people to forget about it. There are some sites like DraftKings, Big Slate does not have him on their main slate, but they do have other slates. I know Rosters has Monday Night Football on their main slate, FanDuel, a bunch of other sites as well. So do not forget about this guy. I know the Eagles' run defense is pretty good. They have a lot of talent there. And Langford wasn't efficient in week one, touching the ball just 19 times for 63 yards. But he did score a touchdown. He does play a million snaps. We talked about it in the preseason. I mentioned a tweet from Adam Leviton where he mentioned that Langford had played all but 3 snaps in the preseason for the Bears. That trend continued in week one. He saw a 35% touch rate, which is a lot, especially given all the snaps that he played. And he faces an Eagles defense that they play a wide nine. What a wide nine is, for when you're looking at football techniques, it starts with the 0, then goes to 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 9 being the furthest outside. When defensive linemen are in the wide nine, it gives more gaps for running backs to run through. Now, the Eagles have good linebackers. That's why they went outside Nigel Bradham. Of course, they have Jordan Hicks as well. That's what the linebackers are for. They clean it up. But the thing is, it's a numbers game. That Bears offensive line, if they get those 2 tackles out wide, they only have to block 4 or 5 people. So for me, I like Langford against a wide 9 defense this week. It's actually a cash game play at its price for me.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a beef here just because I'm not a believer in Langford, and Mike Clay kind of started this whole, revelation about Langford not being hashtag good at football. So, I don't think he is very good, but, sometimes that may not matter. He is going to see all the usage. He saw the highest snap percentage of all running backs in week one. I don't know. I just think you're kind of asking and hoping for a touchdown, which is possible, but you know, I think the Eagles' run defense is very good with Fletcher Cox and that defensive line. I think the Bears' offensive line is shaky right now. With Josh Sitton just joining the team, relatively new face, got to learn the offense and all that. So, while I don't think he's a horrible play, he's not someone I'm kind of looking for uh, initially, especially when he's at that price point where I'm probably just gonna either go a little bit lower for some other guys if I'm not spending up at the running back position.
That makes sense. And when you spend up at running back, you have to usually either go with a cheaper one at the next slot. So that's what we're going to talk about in our next topic here. For those of you that are wondering, you're looking to my right and Adam's right, just what is going on with Danny Woodhead? Why is he a topic? Well, the thing is about Danny Woodhead, a lot of people like him this week, and I think we need to talk about where we should play him. DraftKings, FanDuel, rosters. We play him in PPR formats, not PPR formats, cash or GPP. So, Adam, I'll let you start. Where are you playing Danny Woodhead?
Yeah, so real quick before we get to where, the reason why everybody likes Woodhead, and I do too, Keenan Allen's out for the Chargers this game. I talked about this game. Jim McCormick has talked about this game on RC Live. Relatively high total. I think there's a lot of points scored in this game. And Woodhead just dominated the snaps last week. Outsnapped Melvin Gordon 50 to 23. Saw 21 touches. I don't know if he's going to carry the ball 16 times again, but I think he has a safe PPR floor playing alongside Rivers. He's averaging 5 catches and around 7 targets per game with Keenan Allen out of the lineup. And obviously, he's preferred play on DraftKings where you get the full point PPR. But I still think I'm fine with him on FanDuel because he's not going to get 16 carries most likely. But I think he's the preferred goal line back to Melvin Gordon. I know Melvin Gordon scored twice, but even in the situations where they were ahead of the Chargers last week, or ahead of the Chiefs last week, Danny Woodhead was getting the carries in terms of running the clock and trying to preserve a lead, not Melvin Gordon. So I think he's still going to get 10 carries, I would say. I think he's an underrated goal line and short yardage back. I think he's going to play that role. And I know we prefer pass catchers on DraftKings, but it's not like you have to not play them on FanDuel. It's not like you don't get points for the yards they get. And Woodhead's going to get red zone targets. He's a huge red zone target guy when Keenan Allen is out, and in general, because outside of Antonio Gates, they don't have any big receivers. And I know Woodhead is not big at all, but he's just shifty and he gets open, and Rivers trusts him. So he can easily catch a receiving touchdown, which to me, I think he's fine on FanDuel. I have no problem with him at all.
This is where we're going to beef, Adam. I think this is probably the biggest we've disagreed all this year, and we definitely have a beef here.
It's only
Because
week two, so
yeah,
start.
yeah, we could probably yank each other's throats out by the end of this year. But the one thing I do not like about Woodhead, and this is where I'm going to disagree with you, I think that his floor this week is fine, but his ceiling, I can't do it. And on FanDuel, when you only get that half point PPR, I just don't think that it's worth it. And I have a few reasons for that. Without Keenan Allen, Adam mentioned that he gets 7 targets a game. Now, with Keenan Allen, he gets 6. So it's only one more target a game. It's not that much of a difference. Another thing I noticed, Philip Rivers averaged around 25 fantasy points per game with Keenan Allen. This is per the Game Splits app on RotoViz. Without Keenan Allen, Philip Rivers averaged only like 18 and a half fantasy points. That's a big difference. So for me, a guy like Woodhead in the passing game, when he's going to be used a lot, I think that's part of the reason why him, and I actually looked at it, Antonio Gates struggles a little bit as well without Keenan Allen, because Allen stretches the field a little bit. He moves the middle of the field well, so you get guys on the outside like Danny Woodhead on those flare routes or those wheel routes, or Antonio Gates up the middle on the seam. And I think that's one reason why I don't like Woodhead this week, is because with Philip Rivers' usage going a bit down, I think this could be a game where maybe Melvin Gordon finally gets the snaps he deserves. Last week, he definitely deserved to play more when they were winning that game. So for me this week, this could be a Melvin Gordon game. For that reason, I'm staying away from Danny Woodhead.
I mean, he may not have the highest upside, but he's barely a top 30 price running back on FanDuel. DraftKings, he's very, very, very affordable at 5,200. So I just really like this game. I think Rivers' demise is really overblown, at least for the short time being. So I am on Danny Woodhead. I like him a lot. I actually have him as a borderline top 12 running back in my rankings right now. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we definitely will, because I think this is the biggest topic of the week other than looking at those big games. And the thing that I looked at with Woodhead is when he's playing in these games when they're down, that's when he gets a lot of catches. So maybe this is the week that we just talked about Melvin Gordon gets the carries, but I think we're going to have to disagree here. Time will tell. We'll know on Sunday afternoon, that's for sure. Now, Woodhead is a sleeper at running back, so let's move on to, I think, one of my favorite topics that everybody talks about each week. It's sleepers at the running back position. You need those cheap guys in PPR to be able to fit Antonio Browns and Odell Beckhams and AJ Greens. Adam, your sleeper back last week was good. What about this week? Who do you like?
Yeah, it took me a little bit to look at it because, there's a lot of guys who are priced lowly but aren't exactly sleepers. After a little bit of an underwhelming Week 1 performance against the Saints, I'm kind of on Latavius Murray. He's still super affordable at 5,700 on DraftKings. He didn't see the insane usage that we were kind of alluding, or the Raiders were kind of alluding in the offseason. Still played just under 62% of the snaps, but Oakland got a little bit behind in this game early, and they had to keep up with Drew Brees and the Saints offense, which is why, Murray only had 14 carries. He did get a short yardage touchdown. It didn't help that, Jalen Richard had a 75-yard touchdown. Aluwale was vultured a touchdown from him. But I think this is a great spot for him to at least score here at 5,700, and that's what we're looking for. The Falcons are a really bad run defense, especially in terms of touchdowns allowed. The reason Atlanta was so, was so average to not bad, at least in terms of quarterback fantasy points last year, is because all their touchdowns came on rushing. The Niners are the only team in the NFL since the start of last season to allow more rushing touchdowns than the Falcons. And last year, they both ranked tied for first in rushing touchdowns allowed per game at 1.2. Murray may not have his pass catching opportunities that we saw last year, but even if he's so capable of catching passes. Atlanta's probably the worst pass catching defense in terms of running backs, so he has that. And he's still the lead goal line back in a strong offense and a relatively high total. Again, we talked about it. Raiders are also home favorites in this game. I think Latavius Murray at 5,700 is a pretty good value and a decent guy nobody's really talking about after his less than stellar Week 1 performance.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you look at that game, you're going to see Desmond Trufant covering Amari Cooper. Crabtree's going to get that second guy. Some people are looking towards maybe the tight end. Derek Carr did throw a lot last week, but the Raiders won that game on the ground, believe it or not. So it's a good way to look at Murray. I do love him as a player. I think he's an underrated athlete, 6'3", over 240 pounds. Ran a very quick 40-yard dash in the 4.4s at the combine. So he's a guy that has that breakaway ability. We saw it against the Chiefs last year. But for me, my sleeper this week is TJ Yeldon. Going back to the well, a lot of people used him last week and they were rewarded with a touchdown. The thing with Yeldon is he's going to see the bulk of the work because Chris Ivory is out again this week. He was in the hospital on Tuesday. Can't play yet. That's a quote to use from Jim McCormick from RC Live. He's just not ready yet. We can't blame him. What are you going to do? You can't go out on the NFL gridiron 5 days after the hospital visit. And that's one reason why I like Yeldon this week, because we always talk about volume with running backs. He has that. Last week, he had a 40% touch rate. He had played 90% of the snaps, which is huge for a running back. Considering the Chargers are his matchup, that gives him an even bigger boost simply because the fact that that game isn't necessarily one of these games that a lot of people are going to be looking at the running backs in, might be more of a passing target there. But I think a guy like Yeldon and against a good defense, or a poor defense rather, a good matchup for him in terms of DVP is one of the things I'm looking at. Another reason why I like Yeldon, just 4,700, too cheap, way too cheap. And he's going to be able to allow you to fit all of these other guys in your lineups that you want to use. Guys like AJ Green, who Adam loves. Guys like Odell Beckham, who everyone likes. And maybe even you can fit in Gronk at low ownership this week if he plays. Who knows? Wasn't able to do that, you're going to need to use those sleepers. So let's recap real quick. Adam likes Latavius Murray. I like TJ Yeldon. We discussed Danny Woodhead. I think we can play him in PPR formats, but only in cash. Adam likes him everywhere. So that's you're going to have to pick a side there. Our top 3 running backs, C.J. Anderson, Ezekiel Elliott, and Jonathan Stewart for Adam. It's hard to disagree with him there. I like D'Angelo Williams, Lamar Miller, and Jeremy Langford, who Adam disagreed with me a little bit. Is that right? You're not a big Langford guy?
Not a big Langford guy now.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to go my way on this one this week, Adam. I think he might be one of the better plays at his price. So if we pair him with Yeldon, got about 9,300 pair for just running backs. That'll wrap it up essentially for the running back beef this week. I just wanted to discuss real quick. We have 2 days till football starts, so remember, go over to rotocurve.com. There's tools, rankings. We have a lineup optimizer. It's a members-only free roll for people that want to earn their money back this week. Tons of free content. Adam has a ton of stuff out. Pfeiffer's Phase, one of my favorites to read each week. And he had just published a piece that was published this morning where he discusses the chalk for each week and some pivots to use. I can't wait to read that. One of my favorites to read each week to get me ready for some GPP lineups. We also have 2 other beefs. We talked about quarterbacks. We talked about running backs here. We also have a receivers one, so be sure to check that out. This has been the Daily Beef presented by Rosters.com. Haven't signed up there yet? Use this promo you see below it to get $20 on your initial deposit. For Adam Pfeiffer, I'm Josh Kalachi. Good luck in week 2.